Hey, thanks for being a part of the conversation. We recently spoke with Daniel Jose Older. The first part of our talk is a little distorted, but hang with me because it'll clear up. But it is such an important conversation for creative minds as well as his book. So thank you for being so forgiving right in the very beginning. It was something that we couldn't miss and we couldn't edit out. And I think you'll understand why. Hello and good morning. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Aaron. I'm doing great. How are you?
Just sitting here listening to that voice of yours. See, now I wanted to know what your voice sounded like because you speak so highly of music, and I can hear it in your tones.
Thank you. That's very sweet.
For you to be that writer that knows how to connect readers to the storyline, what is that like, and what did it require in your journey to get to this moment?
Oh, thank you so much, first of all. And yeah, it's been a long journey. I was a paramedic for 10 years in New York City on the ambulance. I was playing music that whole time. And then at some point, I really focused in on writing as where I wanted to throw all of my artistic concentration. That was it for me. So I really went into that, just surrounding myself with stories, whether it was books, movies, video games, shows, people on the corner. And, just the world is full of stories. And I really wanted to take them apart and put them back together to see what makes them tick. And that was really my process when I sat down to write my first book.
So when you say that to put things together and stuff, because this right here, this is the final walk with this saga. Will you step back into it and find newer layers so you can continue that journey with those that you've already captured as listeners and readers?
I think I might. I don't know the answer yet. I know this particular story in this moment was really a 2-book story, right? And this is the Outlaw Saints series. It's about 16-year-old piano prodigy Mateo Matisse. He has to tap into his newfound healing powers when this ancient evil rises in his community, and it comes from the shadowy history of their magical lost island. And he sees the girl that he has a crush on murder someone right in front of his face. That story, like that little seed of a story, I knew that was a 2-book situation. So we're finishing that story with Last Canto of the Dead tomorrow. But it's a huge world, and as you can hear from the concept, there's a ton of history there. And I could absolutely see going all the way back in time and figuring out how it all came together. We'll see.
That's the reason why I asked that question, because, it seems like you're just barely scratching the surface. Yeah, it's an in-depth story. It's an in-depth, journey for all of your readers. But it's like, oh, no, Daniel, this cannot be the last one. And as a reader, I'm going to refuse to accept it as the last one.
Well, I appreciate that. That's the best kind of reader.
So when you do step into the world of folklore, that's continuity. That you've got to be a well-disciplined researcher to make sure that you stay true to what's going on.
That's right. And this book in particular, the culture of the island that they all come from, which is a fantastical imaginary island called San Madrigal in the Caribbean, that is a place that was full of pirates, of Sephardic Jews, of Santeros from Cuba, right? So there's all these cultures mixed in with each other, and they in turn created new gods and spirits and demons and everything else. And yes, it was a lot, but I had so much fun putting all these ideas together and bringing in all these different monsters and spirits and everything else, that it was just like it felt very natural in my head. It came to life, and so it felt very natural to just keep going with it, and that was the process. It was fun. And
I totally believe that even today these spirits and monsters continue. We just can't see them, but if you listen carefully through meditation, they're there. They're knocking on our hearts.
Absolutely. That's it. That's the whole concept of the book right there.
To go into that realm, do you feel it? Do you call to it? How do you get into that moment where you really bring out the character of what's going on?
Yeah, man, it's such a good question, because I think that's something we all struggle with as writers, right? One thing that I always tell my students, and I know helped me a lot, I always tell people to take one acting class if you want to be a writer.
Yeah.
And it seems backwards. You should obviously study writing too. But when you act, when you perform, you take on that persona of that character, and you make decisions as that character, not in an intellectual way, where sometimes as writers we get caught up in our head, right? And we're like, oh, what would this character do? That's the wrong question. Like, really what we have to be asking ourselves is, I am this character. What would I do? What am I about to do based on this? Right? That's a totally different question.
In the way that when you bring these characters to life, that you have the power and the energy to carry them beyond the page. Because, that's one of the hardest things for me to do as a writer, is that I can't set a book down when I'm finished with it and just walk away. I have to mourn their loss.
That's so beautiful. It's true. You know, I think that comes from really giving them full, fleshed out lives, right? So it's not just about the decisions they're making in the moment, like what we were just talking about. That's the book, right? That's the story of the book. But for them to really come alive and walk off the page, they have to have histories. They have to have memories. They have to have relationships, communities, and relationships to their own histories. And if we think about it, each of us has that. And they come out in different ways. They manifest in different ways. And maybe not all those things, well, certainly not all those things are going to make it to the page. Like, just like with research, you know, they say, like, you research 100 different books and one of them makes it on the page. You know, that's how it works. But knowing that will affect how you write them and who they are, and that's what brings them to life for readers.
Part of the fun of writing to me is the editing, where I'm such a stream thinker that it's like, get it out, now go back and piece it all together. Do you do the same?
It's a different process. I love that you're a writer. This is so great to talk about with another writer. It's for me, every book has a different process. Every project really requires me to like approach it differently. So this is Outlaw Saint's a perfect example. Book 1, Ballad and Dagger, right, which came out last year.
Yep.
I outlined the outlines of that book. I mean, I had multiple drafts of the outlines. Like, I went all the way in, and then it was like the process of writing that was kind of filling in those outlines. For Last Council of the Dead, for whatever reason, I just had to sit down and let it rip.
Yep.
I did not know chapter by chapter what was going to happen. They call it gardening, right? And I just planted the seeds, and I helped them grow and cultivated them as best I could, and here we are today. So it really depends on the book.
You're so right about that, about planting the seeds. I talk about that all the time. Plant the seed, take care of the soil, let it grow, and then share the harvest.
That's it. And it's magic, right? It feels like magic. Like, I don't know if you've had that experience. I'm sure you have, where you put something in the beginning of the book and you're like, I don't know why this is here. I don't know what it's going to mean. And then you're like 3/4 of the way through and you're like, oh man, I need that guy. And there he is, like ready to go, jump into action. It's the best feeling, you know?
Well, I'm a true believer that we're chosen to write. We're not the actual writers. We just happen to know how to put the ink on the page.
Listen, we have to step up, and the thing I love about books is that to write them, it means you have to step up and become the writer who's able to finish them. So every book you write grows you. Like, it makes you a better person and a better writer, because you have to figure out that puzzle of what the book is, and that's a journey into itself. Like, that's the writer's journey.
Wow. Daniel, you got to come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
Thank you, sir. I would love to. This has been great.
You be brilliant today, okay, sir?
Thank you, and you too.